Show me the way to go home. I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I had a little drink about an hour ago, and it's gone straight to my head. Wherever I may roam, by land or sea or foam, you'll always find me singing this song. Show me the way to go home.
It starts again. It starts again right here. The same floor, the same cracks in the floor, the same couch, the same look of the couch's cover, the same way the floor meets the furniture's legs, the same way the floor meets the wall, the same way the wall rises up, the same way the wall's covered in paper, the same way that I lean on the boxes, the same way that I talk to myself. Every day has ended up virtually the same and has started virtually the same way. I wake up, I see my surroundings, and I know I'm in the same apartment.
Ramona Mendoza found herself in the same New York apartment, unsure of what decade she belonged to. It could have been any time out there. She was awash with a nostalgia for a future that never happened to her. Every day was the same, at least in the way it started. She spent her afternoons and evenings in pursuit of the truth. She left the apartment and went outside, asking the same eternal questions to doormen, to museum staff. Who was she? Where did she work? Where was her favorite place to spend time? While scouting out these mysteries, memories came up through what philosopher Jacques Derrida called les lacunes laissées en nous pour les secrets des autres, or the gaps in us for the secrets of others. Recollections emerged from out these holes for Ramona. This was New York City. You're going to be a star, kid. Perhaps she already was. Soon it would all make sense. This footage is gathered by the American Institute for a Better Mind at 254 West 54th Street, New York, New York, and is made possible by a grant from the Dakota Chinese American Feasibility Association in partnership with the Ronald J. Reagan Jacqueline Bouvier Beale Kennedy Family Trust of the East Hamptons.
I must remember. I must remember. I must remember. This is not my house. Okay, that I know. This is not my house. This place belongs to another person. I met the person. It's a boy. It's a man. It's a man.
For all of her delusion, Ramona was not particularly wrong. There was a man involved, one professor of astroeconomy and ethnomusicology as it relates to vernacular architecture, one distinguished Dr. Givaldi. In the torment she faced during Mr. Givaldi's many off periods, Ramona Mendoza was prone to wandering the Metropolitan Museum's medieval wing, the Cloisters, in Fort Tryon Park. She fancied herself some type of gardener there, and was disheartened when the museum staff finally indicated to her that she was no employee of the former boarding house for the brides of Jesus. But the Cloisters brought her some semblance of peace, for, like her, the Cloisters were made of fragments. From 1906 to 1914, one Mr. George Gray Barnard, eccentric sculptor, took his bicycle and scoured the French countryside for monasteries and abbeys in disrepair. He gathered stones, sconces, and Gothic architectural bric-a-brac from all of the dislocated and dislodged cloisters of the olden day, until he salvaged enough material to form his most glorious sculptural work of all, the museum, the Cloisters itself. And did not Ramona, in her wild delusions, in her identity, part large between that of a dancer, that of a horticulturalist, did not Ramona Mendoza resemble a cloister made of many cloisters, the stones salvaged from the earth and pasted together, formulating some sort of womanhood? Was not Ramona's body made of a great hodgepodge of artifacts, stuck together by stonemasons, of whom she knew not by name? Was not Ramona the darling of Rockefeller, that dog, how he dogged us all in the dog days? Did not Ramona know perfect fringe?
Exilé ici, j'ai eu une scène où jouait le chef d'œuvre dramatique de tous les littératures. Je vous indiquerai les richesses inouïes. J'observe l'histoire des trésors qui vous trouvâtes.
How long have I been kept here? I have a few clues, the words ringing true in my mind. A few of them, rock and roll, standards, gentrification, raising the rent.
Richer. I would show you unheard of riches. I note the story of the treasures you discovered.
Scholarly activity, grant money. Oh, I know something about myself.
Dr. Givaldi did not, in fact, show up often to the Speckled Herring Inn, which is where Ramona identified as a place of birth. If ever she were to inquire with Givaldi about her origins, he would merely whisper back to her in academic jargon, and the whole interview process began again.
And what are you think the limits or the extremes of rock and roll in this circumstance, within this circumstance specifically?
Well, rock and roll has a long history of being played in sarcophagus type conditions.
I know something about myself. I'm experiencing a job prospect. I'm here for a job. I'm here to do a job. Oh, I lost all of my memories.
Oh, this is, wait, hold on. This is the best image of it. Look at you up here with Rimbaud.
It's a movie now.
Oh, les énormes avenues dépaysantes, les terrasses du temple. Qu'est-on fait de Brahman qui m'expliqua les proverbes?
I wake up every morning the same way, in the same place, in the same city. I'm in New York City.
A deluge of recollection would at intervals crash upon Ramona. Ramona remembered. She was a radio interviewer, and after meeting Dr. Givaldi for an article she did for the Santa Fe, New York Express Post Intelligencer, Ramona entered into a Bohemian Splendor. Her job was to pose for covers of Spectre and Hieroglyphics magazine, a rock and roll formula if she ever knew one. And later that night, Givaldi brought down the house with a standing ovation and accolades from syndicates as varied as Lehman Brothers and Ringling Brothers and the Andrews Sisters and the Bouvier Beals. And yes, Ramona had a job, and a good journalistic job too. The answers slowly came up as her day wore tonight, and she did what she always did then, sneak into the basement of the Chelsea Hotel.
Call is now being recorded.
What is a poem?
A poem is like a desert canyon. You walk in, and on the walls, hieroglyphics from other cultures that have been inherited by the canyon, and which the canyon has made its own. And these consist of symbols of rivers, maybe the sun, a man standing with his staff raised, promoting the earth with its long shaft.
So that's very interesting. Your first book of poems, driving a car off the cliff in the middle of the night into the sunset, was well received. Why?
Under the hard spell of the Chelsea Hotel rock and roll daydream taking place in the center of her own drunken reverie, Ramona, who was in a constant state
I'm in New
as
York
waking
City,
or
crawling
dreaming,
on the
the
ground.
young media celebrity came closer and
underwear
closer to
reality.
remembering the
Yeah,
purple
Yeah,
cloud
the
of event
underwear
from which she
reality.
posited
Now,
her
okay, so
thesis,
this
an
brings me to
agreement
another
entitled
point. I
Going
remember
Under.
on your website you have
What's more, more
page on
and
the
more
metaphysics
people she talked to
behind
led her to
the
believe that
underwear,
there was a
because
hole that
underwear,
she had
and you
forgotten
call it the
about and
underwear
left her
reality.
home
Tell
and
us a
family
little
when
bit
she was
about
merely
the underwear reality.
14.
I'm laughing because
What's
it's just-
more,
it's
never
such a great
mind.
concept.
What's
It
more,
ranks
never
in the New Yorker
mind.
Reddit, and
What's
I want our
more, never
viewers to
mind.
really become
What's
familiar with the
more,
underwear
never
reality.
mind. What's more, never minded.
Excited to talk to you about this for a long
Oh,
time.
I'm so happy.
Underneath everything, the bedrock of society,
Yes.
we find a giant pit. And within that pit is the ultimate lingerie store.
Right.
So everywhere that you see lingerie for sale, you see it in a window display, you see it
Yes.
on a Victoria's Secret model. We all see
Yeah.
underwear in our day-to-day life. Even a Depends underwear, disposable, almost adult diaper is part of the lingerie pit, which is beneath this city.
So you're saying like underneath Fifth Avenue right now there is a pit.
Yes, and that place is full of what actually from the outside looks like purple swirling matter. But if you
Yes.
look deeply into the intricacies of the light and the fog, the purple fog, you will find hosts and hosts and hosts. The lingerie does emerge in some form or the other through the grates in the sidewalk.
Right.
And people are free, if they have the eyesight capacity, to see all these different models coming up of the ground and wear them. And actually, when putting on this underwear, you do actually experience a loss of care about time, space, money, websites, development,
right.
SEO.
Right.
Social media, okay?
Wow.
All technology basically dissipate. It dissolves, and all you can feel is your body being clenched in different areas by.
I'm in New York City, crawling on the ground. I came from a hometown. I have a home phone number. I have a police file. Maybe I have been absolved of some great sin, but either way,
So if you look at rock and roll, it's really praise to the sun. These rock and roll musicians have lost deep contact with their roots, but the roots are in praising soul, S-O-L.
I mean, in your research,
Rock and
in
roll.
your doctorate,
Yeah.
you are positing that we are more in connection with the sun through rock and roll than is. And you're saying that this is going to be lost if we don't do
If we
what?
don't do- if-
I'm sorry, I missed that part. I haven't read that far.
So, I use this metaphor of the sarcophagus to talk about New York City because it's dead. Rock and roll, has really been killed, especially in Manhattan, on the island here. Rock and roll is dead. No true rock and rollers can afford to live in this town anymore. So I call it the sarcophagus, But I think what we need to really do, it's like, have you ever seen when an ancient tomb, we could say in Egypt, they just opened up this new void in the Great Pyramid of Giza. When you open up a space that's been cryptid, it's been cryptic, black, it's been entombed for millennia.
Yes.
Now when you crack that open and sunlight
and the sun
strikes, when
I mean,
rock
coming
comes into
through,
that
and
space,
it's never meant
comes
to
right
be.
through like that, just straight down from
It's
heaven.
not built to be opened.
No. But we have to open it. Because this town, this dark sarcophagus of New York, we need the praise of Ra, who's in the sky right now. The god is actually at about 3 o'clock at the moment. And actually, the Egyptians used to think about the sun itself as the eye of God. Now this is a curious thing. The Egyptians saw the sun. When they looked at the light, they thought it was light coming out of the eye of their god, Ra. So then they thought that their own eyesight was like sunlight coming out of their eyes, because where does our seeing actually come from? This is a very profound ancient question. How do we see? It's almost like we have a light within in which we are perceiving the outer world. The light is coming from within. So now I think rock and roll,
Yes.
its purpose was to devote yourself to the outer God, to the light, and then to realize that that light is actually within you, and that electricity that rock and roll has, you are an embodiment of that, and you're all you're meant to do on earth is really express, scream, shout, twist that up, spit it out, and sing about that thing until you can't sing anymore, until your throat's choked.
I wake up and my hands are tied, even though the strings are invisible. It's as though I'm being clenched here by the supposition of not knowing. And today I decree it. Today I decree. I'm leaving this place. Going out into New York City. I'm gonna find the true meaning of my own flesh and blood. I'm gonna find my home phone number. I'm gonna get a job. I'm gonna contribute to society. I'm gonna get a job. I'm gonna contribute to society.
For all of humankind is a negative age, in the sense that we have gone far beyond the bounds of our own limited consciousness. We have tapped into something that's so universal, so old, and so futuristic that we're going into negative ages in both directions, baby. And that's real.
I'm going to get a job and contribute to society, and I'm going to do it today. And maybe it'll all come back to me, what I'm doing here in the first place. Wouldn't you like to know?
On the evening of March 14th, 2004, Ramona Mendoza died. She was killed by falling stones. Before leaving this earth, she bequeathed her entire fortune.
Just too many writers have collapsed.
Wouldn't you like to know? Wouldn't you like to know?
He also just always wrote himself.
Yeah.
There's a danger in that.
Yeah, okay.
Wouldn't you like to know it?
And I even want to hang out with my brother's friends, which I've never really done. It's horrible. I mean, it's pretty horrible. It's like there's nothing to really talk about. It's just like the tech things you sing.
Unless you talk about strippers.
Yeah, that's so boring. Cars and strippers and
But it's more interesting than recycling and Patagonia vests.
I agree. Yeah, I guess so.
Always find me singing this song. Show me the way to go home.
So at this point, I'm totally freaking out. I'm wondering where am I going to even receive this check, and all of the research that he did was completely based on a subcarbonate emission that came out of the very pit of my thesis. And that's why I was so surprised when he comes downstairs and I'm dressed in nearly everything that I own. I mean, we've all been there. So essentially, yeah, I knew what was going on all along. I didn't say anything about it because I'm here and I'm really thinking, when am I going to see my mom next? When am I going to see my dad next? When am I going to be able to talk to everybody and let them know the truth of what happened? So I'm freaking out, and my heart's racing, and I'm hoping and praying that Ramona's okay, and everything that you've seen so far is just like supposed to make you think that we're on to something. And what was so scary, what was really so scary, was that none of the hieroglyphics matched anything in Spectre magazine. Nothing collided the way we wanted it to.
So at this point, I'm terrified. Ramona, come closer, shed softly your watery eyes. The pangs of your sadness will pass as your senses will rise. For the flowers of the city, though breath-like yet death-like sometimes. And there's no use in trying to deal with the dying, though I cannot explain that in lines. Your cracked country lips, I still wish to kiss as to be under the strength of your skin. Your magnetic movements still capture the minutes I'm in. Oh, but it grieves my heart, love, to see you trying to be a part of a world that just don't exist. It's all just a dream, babe, a vacuum, a scheme, babe, that sucks you into feeling like this. I can see that your head has been twisted and fed with worthless foam from the mouth. I can tell you are torn between sin and returning back to the south. You've been fooled into thinking that finishing end is at hand.